Ladies and gentlemen, this hearing of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will come to order. It is Wednesday, October 25th at 6:12 p.m. We're at the Buena Vista High School Performing Arts Auditorium, and we thank the City of Sierra Vista and the high school for welcoming us. Let's begin by rising to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming this evening to give us your input about the draft congressional and legislative maps. I'm Linda McNulty, a commissioner on the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. I believe that Commissioner Richard Sturtz is also going to join us, but he isn't here yet. We have three other commissioners who will be watching on the live stream this evening: Chairperson Colleen Mathis, Vice Chair Jose Herrera, and Vice Chair Scott Freeman. Typically, we begin the hearings with offering the services of a translator, which is required by the Voting Rights Act. Our translator has not yet arrived either, so I'm going to get started, but if the translator does arrive, we may interrupt the proceedings so that the translator is able to offer his or her services to anyone who might need them. You're going to need to bear with me tonight because with the bright lights in my eyes, I can barely read, so I'm going to use this little flashlight to make sure I cover everything that I need to cover. Our attorney, Joe Canefield, from the law firm of Ballard and Spahr, will be joining us in about 15 minutes. Our Deputy Executive Director, Christina Gomez, is here with us tonight. Christina, if you're in the back, if you could please wave. From our mapping consultant, Strategic Telemetry, we have Corinne Belock with us tonight. We have our court reporter, Marty Herder, who will be transcribing the entire hearing. And we have outreach workers, Shane Shields and Karen Herman, who are in the back of the room on the left by the table there. In the very back of the room is our Chief Technology Officer, Buck Forst, who arranges all our audio, video, and our live stream. As I said, we are live streaming this hearing now so that folks can watch it on our website. There are request to speak forms, yellow request to speak forms, which you would have seen as you came in. If you would like to speak this evening, please fill one of these out and provide it to one of the staff members at the table, and they will bring them up to me. There is also an information packet that I hope you received as you came in. If not, there are more in the table in the back, and they provide a lot of information about the redistricting process, where we are in the process, and copies of the draft maps. There's also at the back of that form a blue public input form. If you're here tonight just to listen and you'd like to provide written comments rather than speaking, you're welcome to fill out that blue form, and you can leave it at the desk, you can mail it to us, or you can submit your input on our website, and we'll give you the website address in a couple minutes here when we do our presentation. Corinne is going to give you on the screen here an overview of the redistricting process, how it came to be, what it is that we're supposed to accomplish, and where we are in the process. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Corinne Belock.
Good evening. I am Corinne Cabina Belock from Strategic Telemetry. I'm happy to be here this evening in Sierra Vista to discuss the draft congressional and legislative maps presented by the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. The goal of these meetings is to hear comments from you about the maps that have been drafted, so thank you for taking the time to attend this evening. The draft maps you see today, or that you will see today, are currently under a 30-day review period so that the Commission can hear your opinion about these maps. So before I get into the maps, I just want to give you a quick overview of the redistricting process. So Arizona's redistricting process is governed by the state constitution as amended by voters in 2000 with the passage of Proposition 106. It stipulates that Arizona's Independent Redistricting Commission redraw congressional and legislative districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. So due to the 2010 census, Arizona gained a congressional seat, going from 8 to 9 seats. So going through the requirements of the state constitution via Prop 106, the new district boundaries must comply with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. They must have equal population, and criteria A and B are federally mandated. And then to the extent practicable, the districts must be compact and contiguous, respect communities of interest, use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tracts, and favor competitive districts where no significant detriment to other goals. So moving on to a bit about the Voting Rights Act before we get into the maps. So Arizona's congressional and legislative districts must receive pre-clearance from or approval from the Department of Justice or a federal court under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act before they can take effect. To get pre-clearance, Arizona must demonstrate that the new districts do not discriminate against minority voters in purpose or effect, which means there can be no accidental or intentional discrimination. Under Section 5, Arizona's redistricting plans cannot be retrogressive. The plans cannot weaken or reduce minority voters' rights. And the presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. So before we go through the timeline of the commission, we have a brief video from Bruce Adelson, who has been advising the commission on matters of the Voting Rights Act.
Hello, my name is Bruce Adelson. I wanted to spend a few moments with you to talk a little bit about redistricting. I was a senior attorney for the United States Department of Justice in 2002 when the department and my team objected to or blocked your legislative redistricting plan. It's very important to understand that under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which is a federal law, Arizona must obtain approval or pre-clearance from the Department of Justice or from a federal court in Washington, D.C. for your redistricting plan to go into effect. Under Section 5, under federal law, your redistricting plan cannot discriminate against the rights of minority voters. It cannot retrogress their opportunity to elect whom they want. This is a federal requirement. The federal requirement supersedes and takes precedence over all state requirements, whether they're competitiveness, compactness, contiguity, or keeping communities of interest together. Those are all very important. But if they conflict with the Voting Rights Act and conflict with the one person, one vote requirement of the U.S. Constitution, then they must be revised. The requirements of the Voting Rights Act and one person, one vote are paramount. There cannot be any retrogression or discrimination against the rights of minority voters. If there is, the Department of Justice will not approve the redistricting plan. That's what we said when we wrote our letter in May 2002, and we objected to what the Redistricting Commission 9 years ago had done. We found that the redistricting plan, the legislative plan, had discriminated against the rights of minority voters. And under federal law, that plan could not go into effect. So that as you contemplate redistricting and look at the various maps that have been provided by the Commission, it's very important to understand that the federal requirements under our system of law and government take priority. Those requirements cannot be minimized and must be complied with for your redistricting plan to go into effect next year to enable you to have your legislative and congressional elections. I hope that my perspective as being a former federal law enforcement officer has been helpful, and I wish you continued success with your redistricting process. Thank you.
So going back to the slides now, the overall timeline for the redistricting process can be broken down into 5 steps, which we'll run through now. Earlier this year, as step 1, the commission was established. The commissioners were appointed following a thorough screening process and serve in a voluntary role for the state of Arizona. Of course, tonight we have with us Commissioner Linda McNulty, and the other commissioners not present are listed on the screen here, which Ms. McNulty already covered. Now, going into step 2 was the first round of hearings. Before drawing a single line on the maps you'll see this evening, the commission held 23 public hearings around the state in July and August to get input from members of the public on issues about redistricting. Comments range from anything about geography, communities of interest, minority voting rights, and competitiveness. Then the mapping process actually began. Per Proposition 106, the commission was required to start with a blank slate, which we'll talk about a little bit more. They then divided the state into equal population and compact grid-like districts, and the grid map was approved on August 18th. Since adopting the grid map, the commission has met more than 25 times to consider adjustments based on the state constitutional criteria. And during this time, they also received additional public input and comment, as well as draft maps from the public. Approval of the draft maps happened shortly thereafter. On October 3rd, the commission approved draft congressional map that incorporated changes based on the constitutional criteria. They then approved a draft legislative map on October 10th. Which brings us to the second round of public hearings. We're currently visiting 25 towns and cities to share the draft maps and to receive additional input during the months of October and November. The next step after the second round of hearings will be final maps. Upon completion of a public comment period, the AIRC will adopt final maps. And then step 6, pre-clearance, which Bruce Adelson touched upon. Again, because Arizona is subject to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the district maps must be approved by the Federal Department of Justice or the federal court in Washington, D.C. before they can be used for Arizona law and Arizona elections. So now moving into the maps. So to show you the process of how the draft maps were constructed, we're going to show you the progression of the maps. So the map you see here on the screen is the congressional map that was approved by the last commission and was most recently used in the 2010 election. Moving into the blank slate map. So per Proposition 106, the commission was required to start with a blank slate, not taking into consideration any previous election districts or incumbents. They then moved into the grid maps, which is also a requirement of Proposition 106. However, the grid map only took into consideration 2 of the 6 constitutional criteria, equal population and compactness. So then in August, the commission asked that 2 grid maps be drafted, and on August 18th, they agreed on option 2, which is the version that you see here. So then, working from the grid map, after more than 25 meetings, the commission voted to approve the draft map that you now see on the screen. In addition to taking into consideration the 6 constitutional criteria, the commission took into consideration public comments that they received at meetings, at hearings, comments that were mailed, emailed, faxed, called into the commission. Basically any means of getting in comments, the commission was able to receive those. And then just so you know, over 5,000 comments helped develop the draft map that you see today. So just to go through some of the highlights of this draft map with you. The draft congressional map includes 2 districts that are predominantly rural, 3 border districts, 3 districts in the greater Tucson region, 5 districts that are entirely in Maricopa County. The map avoids splitting Arizona's Indian reservations, and it creates 2 districts where minority voters have an opportunity to elect a candidate of choice. So now, moving into the legislative maps. Much like the congressional draft map, the process followed same process was followed. Here you see the legislative map on the screen from the last commission, which again was most recently used in 2010 elections. Then again, per Proposition 106, the commission started with a blank slate map, and then a grid map was approved in August. Similar to the congressional map, the grid map only took into consideration equal population and compactness, which leads us up to the draft legislative map. Arizona has 30 legislative districts, and each district elects 1 senator and 2 House members. To go through some of the highlights of the legislative map with you, the commission took into consideration population growth and reduction. So in the old districts, population ranged from about 155,000 to 378,000. Now with the current draft, the population ranges from 207,000 to 215,000. Again, to comply with the Voting Rights Act, the plan also includes 10 districts in which minority voters should have an opportunity to elect a candidate of choice. And the draft you see creates 3 districts wholly within Pima County and 3 additional southern Arizona districts. It creates 17 districts that are primarily within Maricopa County and includes 9 districts that are primarily rural. So again, the most important reason we're here is to hear your input. So we definitely want to hear what you have to say about these draft maps. There are many ways that your voice can be heard, of course. You can fill out a request to speak form at a public hearing and provide the commission with your input. Examples of input might include your thoughts on any of the constitutional criteria or specific recommendations for the congressional or legislative maps. You can also submit your input by speaking at a hearing, filling out a public input form at a hearing or on the AIRC website. And just to highlight the website, it's azredistricting.org. You can also call the commission with any input you have at 602-542-5221 or toll free at 855-733-7478. So another important part of this process is to make sure that you can stay connected throughout the process. So what you see now on the screen is a screenshot of the commission's website. And the arrows highlight a few key areas that I want to point out for you. Under meetings, you can watch future or past meetings. So if you're interested in any of the deliberation that went into forming the draft maps, you can watch the previous dates, videos listed by previous date, and find what you need. If you'd like to make comments, you can go to the public input form link, which is highlighted as well. Or if you'd like to view the maps, which I'm sure you will, you can click on Maps. There's 2 ways to access them on the website, which you see highlighted here at the top and the bottom. Tonight, to talk about the link at the bottom, this will take you directly to the draft maps. And if you click on that link, the screen that you see now is the screen that's going to pull up for you. What you basically see here is a listing of the draft maps saved in various different file types, JPEG, PDF, and tonight we're going to talk about the Google Map/KMZ file because that's a great way to view the maps. So once you click on the link here that's highlighted that says KMZ Google, you'll be taken to the next screen, which you'll see here, which is a viewing of the Google map. So most people, of course, are interested in viewing the draft maps. So once you click on the map, basically this is the version you'll see for the Google map. The great thing about this version is that you're able to zoom in and out down to specific boundaries of your district to see exactly where those lines have been drawn. What you see on the screen now is a draft congressional map zoomed out from the entire state. On the left side of the screen, just to highlight that for you, that's a bar which contains a series of different filters, county tags, tags for different population counts, tags for colors of the map. So if you unclick on some of those check boxes for areas you're not interested in viewing, you'll be able to better view the map specifically for what you're looking for. Just wanted to highlight that for you. So as you zoom into the map, the next slide shows you a view of what that looks like. So this slide shows you a zoomed in look on some of the districts surrounding Maricopa County. Again, you have the ability to zoom in and out on the map down to specific boundaries, specific streets, and blocks that you want to take a look at. So it's a really great way to access and view the maps. So as I wrap this up, I just want to highlight that the Commission's website, again, is azredistricting.org. On the website, you can draw maps, you can watch meetings, and you can also find out about future meetings that have been scheduled. I also want to encourage you to follow the Commission on Twitter if you're into social media at the hashtag AIRC. You can also friend the Commission on Facebook for up-to-the-minute updates. It's a good way to stay connected. As I wrap this up, I would just want to thank you for coming out tonight to be a part of the process. A final point on these maps is copies can be found in your packet tonight that you received, and we also have the poster-sized versions on the back of in the back of the room, which you might have seen as well, which are a great way to view the maps. And I just want to point out that I'm absolutely available after the public comment period to answer any questions you might have about the mapping process or about the maps in particular. I'm happy to speak with you, and you can also grab any staff as well who will be able to answer questions about how to access the maps or anything along those lines. So again, I look forward to speaking with you this evening, and thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Corinne. As you can see, Commissioner Sturts has joined us after a long trip from Tucson. This is, as you see in your packet, we've had a number of hearings. This is the 17th tonight of 29 scheduled hearings. And we don't all attend all of them, so we share the responsibility, and tonight it's Commissioner Sturts and I. Tomorrow night, just for your information, the hearing will be in Mesa, the next night in Safford, then with a simultaneous video cast in Clifton Morenci, the next night in Nogales, and then Saturday in Yuma. Then we have Sunday off, and then we have another series of hearings next week. I'll remind you once again that if you would like to speak tonight, please fill out a yellow request to speak form, and our staff will bring it up here to us. I have about 50 of them right now, so I'm going to ask that we limit our comments to 2 minutes. Buck Forrest in the back has a timer to remind everyone. I think you'll be able to hear it when your 2 minutes is at the end. Please wrap it up so that we can give everybody an opportunity to speak. Last night we had a number of people in Tucson, and it went so long that some people got worn out and went home. So we really do want everyone to have a chance to speak. If you have more to say than 2 minutes will allow, please feel free to fill out the blue forms. You can also submit comments on our website, and our staff can help you if you have questions about how to do that. Everything that you say tonight will be transcribed and will become part of the official record. If you have documents to submit or proposed map revisions or suggestions about things that can be tweaked on the maps, you can give those to the staff, and they will become part of our official record. They can also be submitted electronically, and again, the staff can help you if you have questions about how to do that. As we've said, the reason that we're here tonight is to receive your comments on the draft maps. It's quite a challenge to blend together the 6 constitutional criteria to put these maps together. We spent a lot of time on them, but we understand that you will have comments both about ways in which you think they achieve your objectives, perhaps, and ways in which they don't, and ways in which you'd like to see them changed or improved. To the extent that you can be specific, give us specific comments about those things that would be helpful, and keeping in mind that every time we make one change on a map, it requires that we make other changes, of course, to all the other districts. So if you've thought in considering the changes you would like, how it would affect other districts and what we might do to compensate for them, those kinds of comments are very helpful also. Okay, with that, just a few reminders. When you come up to the microphone, please speak directly into it, which is what I'm trying to do now. Buck or Shane, is there going to be someone in the front of the room who can help adjust the microphone if folks need them to? We'll see if someone can work on that, because sometimes it takes a little work to get it right in the right place. Please give your name and spell it your last name or both names if they're unusual, so Mr. Herder can take an accurate record. If you're going to be talking with us about neighborhoods or particular places that may have unusual spellings, if you could please spell those also for Mr. Herder. Please specify the city or town that you're from. We don't need your address, but we would like to know the area that you live in. If you have any materials that you'd like to make part of the record, please give it to the staff. Okay, with that, we have a member of the Board of Supervisors and a couple city council folks here, so I'm going to call on them first, and then after that, I'll probably call 3 folks at a time so that you can collect your thoughts and be ready to come up when it's your turn. And the first speaker will be Ann English, supervisor from the Cochise County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Commissioners McNulty and Sertz, for being here. I indicated when we had the first meeting that I would hope that you would give us some consideration for compactness and keep Cochise County as a whole, but I would wait to see what the maps look like. And now that we have seen them, I'm here to ask you to make some changes. We've worked very hard in Cochise County to try to develop a total community of interest in our county with a plan. So the Cochise County Board of Supervisors, and by the way, my name is Ann English, A-N-N-E-N-G-L-I-S-H, just like the language. The Cochise County Board of Supervisors strongly objects to the proposed congressional map and the proposed legislative map drawn by the Independent Redistricting Commission. The Board of Supervisors strongly urges the Commission to redraw each of these maps by placing the Cochise County entirely in one single congressional district and a single legislative district. There are only 130,000 people in Cochise County. And so there is a lot of border that you could use all of Cochise County as part of the one of the congressional districts, still have plenty of border that you could divide it into 2 other congressional districts if your total mission is to have 3 districts along the border. We don't feel that the 7,000 people that you've picked out of Cochise County, running from Bowie, San Simon, down and picking up my little community of McNeil and the Chiricahua Mountains, that's 7,000 people you've added to a district that's 500 miles long. We don't think that that represents what you want to do, is to have a congressional person that you can contact when you have problems. It isn't just what they're voting on in Congress, it's all of the day-to-day problems that the congressional people have to listen to, and so it's very important to have people close by that you can contact about your Veterans Affairs issues and those kinds of problems. If you do insist that you can only use these maps, we at the county level have 20 precincts that you have changed. We have to change all of our precincts so that they match with yours. Some of your precincts or some of your boundaries don't match either. So I have given some maps here that shows you if you did a little bit of tinkering with those, we could live with that more. Our ultimate goal is to keep Cochise County whole, but if we can't, then I have some maps to give here, and I have the address of our GIS coordinator that you could I'm sure you have lots of information too, but these maps will give you an idea of exactly what we're after here in Cochise County. And we think that it's very important that you consider the community of interest, and Cochise County is a whole community of interest. We think that county boundaries are important, and we ask that you honor those. Could I give these to you?
Thank you, Supervisor English. Our next speaker will be Tom Crosby, a member of the Sierra Vista City Council. And while Mr. Crosby comes up, I will tell Mr. Canfield that I already introduced him in his absence, but this is our legal counsel, Joe Canfield.
Tom Crosby, Sierra Vista City Council. Basically, this is how we'd like our district maps drawn. For the legislative district, the border on the south, the Santa Rita Mountains to the west, the New Mexico state line to the east, Graham and Greenlee counties to the north, for the congressional district. The first one I said was a legislative district, excuse me. For the congressional district, the border to the south, the New Mexico state line to the east, Graham and Greenlee counties to the north, the east half of Santa Cruz County, east of Highway 83, and the east portion of Pima County. I consider the residents of this county to be my neighbors. I'm very familiar with the challenges of the border, both from a crime standpoint and more recently from the border-related fires. I found it interesting that the speaker in the video touted his credibility as a former federal law enforcement officer, because so am I. So when I saw the proposed LD2, it immediately struck me as a map of the busiest smuggling routes for illegal aliens and dope in the country. In view of the minority-majority requirements that the speaker in the video spoke of, I found that an interesting coincidence. I don't want the northern regions of Legislative District 2 to become the de facto U.S.-Mexican border. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Our next speaker is, I believe, Jerry Alderman from the Globe City Council.
Commissioners, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I spoke to you, Commissioner Sturts, at Globe on Friday. I was a little disturbed as your closing remarks were that our paper didn't match Flagstaff. I'm also opposed to the legislative map and the congressional map you have. We have submitted formally a map of our latest congressional map. I'll leave that with you. My main focus here is to share with you what we are as a government. I'm on the lowest rung of that political process, grassroots. I serve approximately 1,200 people in my district, and each council person serves the same amount. I suggest to you that the amount of paper and the quality of paper are two different things. The quality of the resolutions that the cities of the Rural Eastern Coalition have sent to you folks represent numbers of people that we represent. If we had everyone here that we represent, this house would be full. So therefore, we represent our constituency. It's important that you folks realize that. We have a total of 7,532 people that we represent in that resolution that we sent to you. Miami has 1,837, Superior 3,158, Winkleman 353, Duncan 696, Hayden 662, Show Low 10,660, Eager 4,885, Springerville 1,961, Pine Top Lakeside has 4,282, and those are the 10 that have submitted resolutions to you folks. I implore you that you look at that as numbers. Listen, the folks that I represent are like me. They're on a fixed income, and a lot of folks cannot make the meetings. There are a lot of folks who are infirm. There are folks who are without jobs that can attend, so we do that for them. We represent them. There are going to be 5 other communities that are going to send resolutions to you folks, and they have numbers as well. It's really easy to pull those numbers up. Our maps, they are have community interest, mining, cattle, ranching, trees, timber, and so that's what rural Arizona is about. And I would just like to submit these to you. and ask you to really consider the numbers behind those resolutions. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. God bless you.
Thank you, Councilman Alderman. Okay, our next speaker will be Caitlin Kramer from Douglas, followed by Susan Ann Kramer, Michael Gomez, and Kathleen Gomez.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. First, I would like to thank you for your efforts in this task. My name is Caitlin Kramer, K-R-A-M-E-R. I am 13 years old, and I have lived in Douglas all my life. I attend 8th grade at Paul Huber Middle School. In 5 years, I will be registering to vote. The maps you are creating now will affect me at this time. I ask that you reconsider both the legislative and congressional maps in order to keep Cochise County in the same district. By splitting our country into more than one district, you will be hurting our chances of economic growth that we really need. It would pit cities in Cochise County against each other for state or federal monies and programs like schools, colleges, and hospitals that would help our county. It may be hard to get a legislator from another area to fight for us. As one county, we know the needs of our neighbors. In our county, we can work together to bring resources here. The redistricting maps will place us with communities that we have nothing in common with and separate from the communities that we do share common interests with. Because we are just about as far from the state capital as possible, it is important that we keep our county intact so that we can work together for improved services in Cochise County. I urge you to make these changes in these maps since they will affect Cochise County for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Ann Kramer from Douglas.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Let me first commend you for your efforts in the task you have undertaken. My name is Susan Ann Kramer, K-R-A-M-E-R. I have lived in Douglas since 1981. I taught middle school at Ray Barain Middle School for 26 years and now own my own interior decorating business. I am the Vice President of the Douglas International Rotary Club. I sit on the board of the Greater Douglas Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Douglas Unified School District Board of Education. I'm also a member of the Sierra Vista Chamber of Commerce. I would like to ask you to reconsider the legislative and congressional maps in order to keep Cochise County whole. With the new maps, there will be no community of interest. Throughout Cochise County, we work together to promote and support community events in our neighboring towns. We support nearby communities in times of tragedy, most recently the fires in both Portal to the east and down here in Hereford near Sierra Vista, as well as the Wilcox School fire of a year ago. It is more likely for the surrounding areas to seek aid in these instances or things like this than it would be for someone in Yuma or Flagstaff to want to help us. Support for state and federal funding possibilities will be reduced for our community by this new map because we'll be pitted against one another. Communities in the same county will be competing with each other for the same, very often limited monies. We need to make sure that our county remains in the same legislative and congressional districts for the next 10 years. I urge you to reconsider the redistricting maps and to keep our county together. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Our next speaker is Michael Gomez from Douglas.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Dr. Michael Gomez. I'm not a politician, but I am the mayor of the city of Douglas, and I certainly will try hard. It's taken us years to develop this community interest in Cochise County amongst the mayors. We meet every month, and we talk to each other, and we try to solve our problems, and we discuss what we are doing for our towns and everything. But what makes Arizona great? The cities. Not the legislature, not anybody else. The cities make Arizona great. And the problem is that the border cities are the ones that have a unique situation because they have to keep that legal trade coming in from Sonora. They spend $7.2 million a day from Sonora legally in Arizona. So do you think that by including three districts is going to help? I can tell you that whoever lives in Flagstaff is not going to be interested in border cities or border areas or border issues because they won't have time for it. The mayors of the Arizona border, we have a border mayors coalition, and we talk to each other weekly, and we solve our problems that we share. Not only that, not too long ago, we formed the Border Mayors Association in El Paso of the entire border of Mexico. So what you have done is split our community because those cities in Cochise supported border issues. When I asked them to support the port of entry in Douglas, it was unanimous. Without a doubt, they supported our border issues. So what has happened is, I guess, now that you have split us, I guess Bisbee and Douglas are only going to be the two mayors that have a border mayors or a Cochise County meeting because everybody else is gone. They might have different agendas. But I can tell you, will the congressional person, whoever it is from Flagstaff, come to the Arizona Border Commission meetings? Will they come to the border mayors meetings? Will they come to all those meetings that we have border issues? I don't think so. You should consider keeping Cochise County whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker is Kathleen Gomez, and she will be followed by Councilmember Gwen Calhoun, Margaret Stevens, and Jerry Ligon.
I also have my son Diego Vlasic that had to sign a form that was in Spanish because you didn't have any ones that were in English. So I'm hoping that maybe you can adjust it so that he could speak too. My name is Kathleen Gomez, and I'm from Douglas, Arizona. I want to thank you for your hard work, but I come before you as a third generation born and raised in Douglas. I am president of the Douglas Rotary, the vice president of the Greater Douglas Chamber of Commerce, and member of the Douglas Centennial Committee. And I'll tell you, working on the Centennial Committee, we all got together in Cochise County to bring our history together. That history is what makes us whole. And it was amazing in that history what we shared together. I'm also work for the Southeast Arizona Medical Center, which was once the Cochise County Hospital and is 101 years old. I'm their marketing and PR person. We all know that it is difficult to work within the guidelines that have been set upon you. Population, competitiveness, and the Voting Rights Act are crucial in drawing new lines for the districts. But these goals, in my opinion, have worked against Cochise County, and what I think are the most important of all is true representation of the citizens of Arizona, and especially of Cochise County. Cochise County is very diverse and has learned to work together for the economic and cultural well-being of our community. The Chambers of Commerce in Cochise County have done something that no one else has done. We have formed the Southeast Arizona Rural Chamber of Commerces. This plan that splits the county in half is going to impact our efforts greatly in what we are able to do in Phoenix and in DC. You know, the saying is, as Maricopa goes, so does the state, and rural Arizona's concern down the drain. And that's exactly what I feel has happened here. The ranching community has been the foundation of Douglas. The ranchers built our banks and were the foundation of creating our community. They now are part of a congressional district that encompasses half the state and puts them in Flagstaff. For Douglas and Bisbee, you've taken us out of Cochise County as far as our congressional concerns. We may be a Mexican community. We may be Nogales, Douglas, and South Tucson, but we are very, very different. You know, in many ways, you hear a lot of words, and I was trying to think about how I could show you how passionate we are in Cochise County about what has happened, and all I can think is a visual example. If this is a congressional district, you split Cochise County in half. If this represents Cochise County legislatively, you've taken Douglas and Bisbee, and you've divided us. You've divided a community that was once great and together into pieces. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Our next speaker is City Council Member Gwen Calhoun.
Good evening. I have to say that I agree with most of the speakers who've spoken tonight about Cochise County. We are indeed passionate about how we feel about being a family in this county, in Cochise County. However, one of the speakers, and my purpose for being here is just to comment about one of the speakers, not necessarily about the redistricting. City Council Member Crosby spoke about the district and how he felt the borders should be. I just want to clarify to the commission that Councilman Crosby spoke for himself, and by the use of the word "we," he implied that he was speaking for the City Council of Sierra Vista, and that is not true. He spoke for himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Calhoun. Our next speaker is Margaret Stevens.
Yes, my name is Margaret Stevens, and I thank you for being here. Stevens is spelled S-T-E-P-H-E-N-S. I am not any group. I'm myself. I'm almost 80 years old. I've been living here since 1963. I've noticed that the maps on these, especially this congressional map, I'm somewhere along this wiggly line. I don't know whether I come to 1 or in 2. Either way, both of the maps are going to split our Palominas School District in half. And I live in Hereford, and that's where the Palominas School District is located. And it is also difficult for me to figure out, since if I ended up in being number 1, it goes all the way up to Utah. And we have nothing in common with anybody up in that area. That would be just like trying to graft a lemon tree onto a pecan tree. They just don't meet. And it's, sorry, but it is, we have absolutely nothing in common with that part of Arizona, and it's, for myself, it's very difficult to even make the trip from here to Phoenix if I have to, much less to go all the way up there in order to see a congressional member, and I doubt that they would want to travel all this distance to come down here to see anybody down here. So it would be like having nobody. It's almost like for the past year we have not had a representative since our current representative was unfortunately shot. And it is, I agree with everybody that has been up here that we need a complete redrawing of both of the maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerry, Ligon, followed by Ruben Ortega, John Haas, and Katie Miller.
That's the first time that I haven't had to spell my last name, my own self. So thank you for that, and good evening. And I have a very short thing to say. I agree with everything that has been spoken so far. For the past 10 years, some of us in Cochise County, I live in the county, have had to deal with a ridiculously drawn LD 25. For the past 10 months, we in CD8 have had no congressional representation due to the terrible incident. I believe that we are due some consideration from this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruben Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Ruben Ortega, O-R-T-E-G-A. I reside in the Hereford area and currently am in Legislative District 25. When people like the lines, it's called redistricting. When people dislike the lines, it's called gerrymandering. So I'm here not to criticize you, but to compliment you for taking on this task. Briefly, in 1990, as a member of the legislature, the last year the legislature drew lines, I acted as a principal in conjunction with the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, as well as the Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project. We convinced the Department of Justice to compel the legislature to draw Legislative District 8 as a new majority-minority district. The year 2000, the Commission drew Legislative District 25, again drawing a majority-minority district. I'm here to address what I call the second cousin to Legislative District 8, and that is Legislative District 2. That district, majority-minority makeup, is over 70%. I believe that may border on packing, which is also a violation of the Voting Rights Act. We can avoid retrogression and keep Cochise County all in one legislative district. We don't need 70% majority-minority district in Legislative District 2. You can take the precincts of Douglas, Pearlville, Bisbee, Naco, put them back into Legislative District 1, and if you need to pick up additional population, you can pick up that population in Pima County. The Voting Rights Act does not set a percentage as to the number of minorities in a district, but it does say you may not retrogress from the current amount. I do hope that the Commission will keep Cochise County all as one community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega. John Haas.
I'm Katie Miller.
Okay. Mr. Haas, do you mind if we have Ms. Miller go? Okay, Katie Miller.
You had me after Mr. Ortega. I'm Katie Miller from St. David, Arizona. Much of the testimony has been given supporting 2 rural districts in Arizona. You can do this without including Cochise, Graham, and Greenlee. The state has a rural population of 1,420,448. A congressional district needs 710,224 people. If you create the 2 rural districts, you then have 174,189 people left over, and the population of Cochise, Graham, and Greenlee is approximately 170,000. There's no reason to keep Cochise, Graham, and Greenlee with the rural areas on the congressional map. I also want to address the legislative map. I'm not here as a representative of a school board, but I am on a school board. The fact that you're splitting both Vail and Palominas school districts in 2 is abysmal. School districts should be kept, they're going to have to deal with 4 representatives and 2 senators on the legislative side to get any kind of representation in the legislature. I also want to address that with 30 days, you cannot even make it into Northeast Arizona as a commission. You are going to only use a teleconference to listen to their side of this, and yet you expect a congressman to cover that entire area. When they come home on a weekend, you're going to have 11 counties that have to have congressional offices and staff that will then have to be paid for by the taxpayers of this country and this state. It's abysmal. We want to be whole. We want to have Cochise County whole and get rid of the salamander that goes across the bottom of our border. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Haas, it's your turn now. Mr. John Haas.
John Haas from Sierra Vista, H-A-A-S. Cochise County has always been a competitive district. when the old maps we were competitive, we had part of Pima County, East Pima, we had no problem with that. We was happy, it was competitive, we're still competitive. Up until this last map, you kept us whole. Our issue is that we want to remain whole. Our county represents only 131,000 approximately population. There's no reason why this county needs to be chopped up and gerrymandered along the border to come up with numbers. Us, Greenland and Graham County, and if you threw in Santa Cruz, I mean, that's only about 224,000. There's no reason why you can't keep them 4 counties whole. And as part of the legislative district map with the snake going along the border, Cochise, Sierra Vista may not be on the border, but we are a border community. Everything filters. We're a center of commerce for this county. And then not to have us as a border county being part of the border in Cochise County is preposterous. The gerrymandering has to stop, and we want to keep Cochise County whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next will be Diego Vlasic, followed by, I believe it's Jerry Friedenberg, Jesus Obregon, and Tony Arena.
All right. My name is Diego Vlasic, V-L-A-S-I-C. I was born in New York City, and for the past 5 years, I've been living in Douglas. I am proud to say that I'm the 4th generation of Gomez family to call Douglas home. I plan to go to med school, but I've always been involved in politics. I have spoken before the New York City Council and have lobbied for the New York legislator in Albany. I have always had an interest in running for office. I've come to appreciate Cochise County for the way of life it offers, the wide open ranges, the varied cultures, and a way of life that is unique. As I looked at the maps that have been drawn, I cannot understand why Cochise County is split in half. I understand that by doing so, you have gathered 7,000 voters from the eastern half of Cochise County and have put them into a district that goes from the southern border to the northern border of the state. It has left me wondering how it is possible to truly have 7,000 in eastern Cochise County represented. As I look in Congressional District 1, I wonder how the elected congressional official could truly represent the district well in the amount of communities he would have to represent and the amount of land that he would have to travel. I frankly don't know how or what Double Adobe and McNeil would have in common with Flagstaff, other than the fact that they live in the state of Arizona. I wonder if any of you have visited the eastern part of Cochise County. Some say it is to create a 3rd district that touches the border, but truly, what does that accomplish? The area on the border is just land, not people. If you have disenfranchised the 7,000 citizens from being part of a community and you have torn apart a community, you've torn the part of Cochise County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vlasic. Jerry Friedenberg.
Can you hear me? Jerry Fredenberg, it's J-E-R-E. Last name is Fredenberg, F-R-E-D-E-N-B-U-R-G-H. I'm going to voice what all of the people have voiced. I want Cochise County whole in both the legislative and the congressional districts. Specifically, if you keep Cochise County whole, add in Graham and Greenlee, and then east of the Santa Ritas, and some portions of south and east Pima County, that would be sufficient for a congressional district. We have nothing in common with northern Arizona. We have nothing in common with the Indian reservations. Legislative, please return Bisbee, Douglas, Palominas, Purtleville to Cochise County. Include Graham and Greenlee, east of the Santa Ritas, and that should be sufficient population for a legislative district. Our communities revolve around the border, small towns, ranching, farming. Separating our county into multiple venues will have an adverse effect on our community of interest and is not necessary based on our population. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fredenberg. Jesus Obregon.
Good evening. My name is Jesus Obregon, O-B-R-E-G-O-N, and I am a resident of Douglas. Good evening, Chair and Commission. I would like to thank you for your efforts in this thankless task you have undertaken. I have been a teacher in the Douglas school system for over 40 years and have watched my students either stay or in many cases leave to places of more opportunity. I had thought to speak mainly on the competitive nature of this process that you are indulging in. But I would also like to mention a second factor that will be greatly influenced by the distinct district lines that are being drawn. I speak of Douglas because it's a place where I live, and this is one of the cities that are taking part in this part of the new maps. I speak of also the power that exists in this part of the state, which was largely influenced by the creation of I-10 and continued with the closing of Phelps Dodge. I would like to mention our dependence on a foreign country, Mexico, and its purchasing power in Douglas. These are conditions and things that we do not share with Sahuarita, which has an average income of over $33,000, South Tucson, or the reservations up north, which have access to federal funding. If we elect a representative, we need someone who will represent our common interest and represent us as part of this state of Arizona. We are also residents of Arizona. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now Ms. Tony Arena, followed by Victor Walker, Michelle Emerson Roberts, and Tricia Grerrodette. Ms. Arena, go ahead.
It's Arena. First, I'd like to read a brief statement from the wife of our Cochise County Sheriff, Larry Deaver, Nancy Deaver. She wished to state, Cochise County residents deserve to be represented as one unit. Our county is small, and dividing it for representation takes away any chance that our voice will be heard in state or national legislatures. I travel and work in almost... Is that for real?
No, that's not for you.
I didn't think so. I travel and work in every school district across the county. The needs and wants are the same. Cochise County residents deserve to be unified. The people of this county are unified in this request, and we want to be united in our representation. Thank you, Nancy Deaver, St. David. I'm speaking on behalf of many ranching families from Portal to Douglas. We've had a tough decade. With no cell coverage, we are the chosen path for the cartel's havoc. This past summer, we lost 80% of our Chiricahua Mountains. Now we're losing our vote to these maps. We will be designated to the bottom corner of an impossibly large and unwieldy map where our representative is from a city probably 300 to 400 miles away. Please reconsider and keep Cochise County together. I also have a brief statement from another ranching family, Peggy Davis from Tombstone. The unification of Cochise County is essential for citizens' safety and for national security of the United States of America. Those of us in the borderlands have little in common with folks north of Flagstaff. Our representative should be in our geographic area. Please keep Cochise County together in the same district. Brief comment, Roger Barnett, rancher from Douglas, is in full agreement with all these statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Victor Walker.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. First, I'd like to commend you for your efforts in this huge task that you have taken on. My name is Victor Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R, and I've been a resident of Sierra Vista for 23 years, working for various contractors at the Electronic Proving Ground at Fort Huachuca. Before that, I served 26 years in the United States Navy. My wife is retired from the Sierra Vista school system. Recently, I volunteered for nearly 3 years in a position which took me all over the 6,200 square miles of this county, talking to citizens about their issues and concerns. Based on my experience, I can report to you that Cochise County is a definable community of interest. One facet of that commonality is veterans affairs. Veterans' concerns are pretty much the same, whether we live in San Simon in the far east part of the county or here in Sierra Vista, a 2.5-hour drive away. Now, the fact that we have Davis-Monthan and Fort Huachuca in the same congressional district has worked well. I ask the Commission to consider the whole county and specifically its veteran community when you draw lines that split us up into two competing districts, where veterans may have to travel hugely long distances for services. Veterans are united in defense of this country, and we need a unified voice in our Congress and legislature. One thing you can be absolutely sure of is my respect and admiration for this commission. Yours is a tough job. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Michelle Emerson Roberts.
Michelle with one L, Emerson-Roberts. I'm a resident of Cochise County. I live in Hereford, but I have a business in Sierra Vista, and I have a business in Douglas. My husband and I both do. We want to see Cochise County left whole. There is absolutely no reason on this earth to split us up. We are a community of interest. We have nothing in common with Northern Arizona. Leave us alone. That's all we're asking, okay? There's enough population to do that, and according to the Arizona Constitution, C through E, that hasn't been followed, guys. Maybe I don't understand, but it doesn't appear to me to be followed. I listened to the man's speech a while ago, the presentation. I am one of those minorities, and I'm not being represented. My rights, my voting rights, nothing is being represented if you split this county up, okay? And I would like to say, as a business owner in Sierra Vista, Tom speaks for me, okay?
Thank you, Ms. Emerson Roberts. Tricia. I'm going to let you pronounce your last name for me, because I know I'm not getting it right.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tricia Gerrodette. That's G-E-R-R-O-D-E-T-T-E, and I live in Sierra Vista. What a task. I was intrigued by a sentence here in the cover letter that Chairwoman Mathis wrote. Our task has been to work out a puzzle with no perfect solution. And I think that pretty much captures it for me, and I'm sure for you. That said, I guess I'm grateful that at the legislative level, we're not even proposing to split Sierra Vista, which has been a problem or a difficulty. Most people don't wind up knowing what district they're in. But I do hope that you can find a way to keep Cochise County together, both at the legislative district level and the congressional map level. I do find it interesting and ironic that you listened to the people who wanted 3 districts on the border and achieved that. One way to achieve that was to split somebody, and you wound up splitting Cochise County, which we're here to object to. I think your task, if you try to stick with 3 congressional districts on the border, you're going to split someone else. And so the irony is we don't want to be split, but we'll let someone else be split. So I, again, do not envy you your job, but please do try to keep us together. Thank you.
Thank you. How are we all doing up here? You want to take a break? You sure? You okay? Okay. Next speaker will be Lee Chadbourne, followed by Susan Breen, Matt Perilli, and Matt Cregan.
Hi, my name is Lee Chadbourne. I'm from Sierra Vista. Last name is spelled C-H-A-D-B-O-U-R-N. I'm here just like the others. The one thing that I'm coming to you as a request is that from a standpoint of representation, Cochise County has smaller cities, and like Sierra Vista and Douglas, Bisbee, these are smaller cities. They're not metropolitan cities like we're coupled in with Tucson on the other side, and so that type of representation is going to be much different, and than us, we're more of a rural community, and so I don't see a good representation by coupling us up into Pima County and with Tucson. But it would be much beautiful, better representation if you were to keep Cochise County as a whole. And both the congressional and then also the legislative, you're splitting up Palominas and Bisbee way in the bottom and taking that and putting it in with another district. And again, we need to keep the county as a whole.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Chadbourne. Susan Breen.
Good evening. My name is Susan Breen, and that's B as in Baker, R-E-E-N. First of all, I want to thank the commissioners for volunteering to do this increasingly thankless job that I understand is a very difficult balancing act. I am a resident of Clifton and Greenlee County, but I do work as an educator in Cochise County. I do not have a problem with the congressional map. I understand that if you're going to keep a congressional district rural, it means the geographical size will have to be huge in order to have populations roughly equal to other CDs, especially as the rural areas of Arizona are losing population. I think the emphasis tonight on the community of interest, it's important, but there are other things to consider, as you all know. As far as the impossibility of one congressional representative covering such a large district, I think it depends on the congressperson. Our congressional representative in 2008 came to Greenlee County 5 times and was very interested in things that concern us, such as mining, so on. Our Republican representative has never come to Greenlee and has indicated that he will not. I want to talk a little bit about the legislative map because I'm not happy with the legislative map. It's not competitive, and without competitive districts, we don't get candidates. Without candidates, we don't get voters to the polls, and that goes against our democratic process. For example, the first legislative district, LD1 in the draft map, takes the only Democratic part of Cochise, Bisbee and Douglas, and aligns them with the most Democratic areas of the state, which is southern Pima and Santa Cruz County, to create Legislative District 2. At the same time, it takes the only Democratic part of Graham, which is the Apache Reservation, and puts it with the already Democratic, heavily Democratic LD7. That leaves LD1 completely Republican. Why should any Democrats bother running? Why should they vote? Competition is important, and I hope you will consider it when you come up with a final legislative map. And thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Breen. Matt Perilli.
Thank you. My name is Matt Perilli, and I'm a resident of Sonoyta, Elgin area, just west of Fort Huachuca at the eastern edge of Santa Cruz County. I've come here to redress an egregious wrong in the current redistricting process. The current draft congressional and legislative district maps proposed by the Commission for Sonoyta, Elgin area pose a significant detriment to that community. In both these cases, the residents of our community have been stripped of districts CD8 and LD30 that have proven satisfactory and workable over the past 10 years. The proposed boundaries for the new districts appear nothing more than to assure a minority majority for Hispanics in the proposed CD3 and LD2. Let me make it clear that I'm not against that. What I am against is the total disregard for communities of interest in favor of competitiveness and an over-reliance on population balance and contiguity. Two examples of that are the splitting of Cochise County in two, which makes no sense, and the ridiculous extension of the new LD2 and CD3 districts into targeted liberal and Hispanic locales such as Naco and Douglas, or the so-called salamander. Bear in mind that in 1993, Shaw v. Reno, and in several cases since, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the equal protection provisions of the 14th Amendment are violated when district lines are so irregular that it can only be viewed as an effort to separate the races for purposes of voting. And I quote, "The message that such districting sends to elected representatives is equally pernicious. When a district obviously is created solely to effectuate the perceived common interests of one racial group, elected officials are more likely to believe that their primary obligation is to represent only the members of that group, rather than their constituency as a whole. This is altogether antithetical to our system of representative democracy," end quote. The Commission has made a point of the proviso for competitiveness as a basis for many of the proposed boundaries. In fact, Proposition 106, the will of the people, subordinates competitiveness to communities of interest. Populations naturally coalesce around common values, beliefs, and interests, forming communities. It is not within the purview of government to forcefully rend those communities asunder to favor some other form or interest. That is social engineering and a loathsome concept inimical to the constitutional guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Prop 106 also calls for districts having equal population to the extent practicable. I grant you that the term practicable is somewhat subjective, but it clearly allows for population variances from district to district where it makes sense to do so, especially where it preserves the other objectives and is in concert with the will of the people. Let us never forget that the source of the power of government is the consent of the governed. I have several items that I will wish to briefly address to make the case for moving the district boundaries of CD2 and LD1 to the west to incorporate Sonoyta Elgin with Cochise County, Sierra Vista as a community of interest. Our area is a sparsely populated area with a high proportion of livestock and agricultural enterprises to include burgeoning winemaking sector. There are but 3 wine trails in Arizona: Verde Valley, Sonoyta, and Wilcox. Under my proposal, the latter 2 would share the same representatives. In that regard, this area is not at all like western and northern reaches of the Commission's proposed LD2 and CD3. It is far more in line with the livestock and agriculture.
Let's finish up so that everyone has a chance, and we'd be happy to take your written comments and include them in the record.
In addition, Sonoyta has an area of significant population of retired military persons, 60, representing 6% of the population of Sonoyta Elgin. They all use the facilities at Huachuca, the PX, the commissary, and the Veterans Affairs Clinic in Sierra Vista. There are a number of persons also living there who work on the fort, and they overwhelmingly shop in Sierra Vista and not Nogales. Further, many of the aforementioned people and many of the others use the west gate to enter Huachuca and Sierra Vista. Just 2 years ago, officials from the fort wanted to close the gate for cost.
Time to give someone else a turn. Please submit your written comments.
All right, I'll leave those with you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
And there are
Pirelli.
maps. There are maps attached.
Okay, that's good. Mr. Shields, right behind you, can take those for the record. And our next speaker is Matt Cregan. He'll be followed by Robert Leach, Rich Brownell, Andre Newcomb, and Robert Fleming.
My name is Matthew Cregan, C-R-E-E-G-A-N. I'm a resident of Cochise County in Hereford. I'd like to thank you for coming down to meet with us. I will echo many of the sentiments of Supervisor English, the Mayor of Douglas, and for Tom Crosby, the councilman in Sierra Vista. I live in Hereford, but I do run an office in Sierra Vista, And much like Ms. Emerson Roberts, I wish to say Councilman Crosby speaks for me as well. Last time you were here was August 4th. Many of the people speaking said the same thing then. You didn't listen to us. Please listen to us now. Cochise County must remain whole. The CD, East Cochise County, has nothing in common with Flagstaff. Last time, folks from Santa Cruz County came and they claimed they had nothing in common with Tucson. Cochise County has less in common with Flagstaff than that. If you're from Portal or Douglas and you have a problem, you have to see your congressman, Social Security issues, whatever, you have to travel about 5 hours or so to go to Flagstaff. Madam Chairman, just tonight when you greeted Commissioner Sturts, you said it was a long way from Tucson. Well, it's even longer to go to Flagstaff. Cutting off the bottom of Cochise County is nothing but gerrymandering on your part. I would like to see that corrected. The Commission's transparent effort to benefit one political party in the state over another makes a mockery of our redistricting laws. This map was drawn with an undeniable partisan bias. Please fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert, settle down, Robert Leach, L-E-A-C-H.
Correct, thank you. I'm from Sierra Vista as well. First, I'd like to thank the Commission and Strategic Telemetry for doing a fine and absolutely perfect job so far. I commend you all. Despite the continued assault by the Tea Partykins who have politicized the independent process that was voted for by the people.
Hey. We can respect one another or we can adjourn, one or the other.
It's about integrity. I guess they don't have any. In fact, I would like to ask the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate Tom Horn's investigation of this commission. Tom Horn opened up an investigation right after he stated his office, don't have any reason to believe that anything was done wrong. This means his investigation is purely political and has undertones of interference. I would also call on the Department of Justice to investigate Tom Crosby's use of we. Although I am not a resident of Hereford, I am a free thinker. I do believe you have done a pretty good job with the legislative maps, but there is still room for improvement. According to your legal overview on your website, in Arizona Minority Coalition, the Arizona Supreme Court suggested that the IRC's advertised map should make adjustments for all 6 goals specified in subsections 114A through F, rather than addressing the 6th and final goal of competitiveness only after receiving public comment on the first advertised map, as the IRC did in 2002. With that said, when you look at the legislative districts 1 and 2, there's a huge disparity between the registered voters. LD1 has 42% registered as Republicans, while it only has
LD1 has 42%.
LD1 has 42% registered as Republican, while it only has 26% Democratic. And LD2, 20.7% are Republican and 46% are registered Democratic. By shifting the maps to include more LD2 Democrats than LD1, you could create 2 fairly competitive districts within 5% while still protecting minority-majority elements along the border. This would support the Arizona Supreme Court stated about making adjustments for competitive districts. With regards to the congressional map, I would ask the Commission to leave the IRC-approved map alone. The people are stronger than any borderline drawn. And if a U.S. Senator can represent the entire state, so can a congressperson. Additionally, I'd like to add that the population of this state does not reflect a red state. The population reflects an independent, neutral state. However, this is not reflected in our state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rich Brownell.
Do I need to spell that? B-R-O-W-N-E-L-L. And I'm from Sierra Vista. And I'd like to thank the Commission for coming down and listening to us. It sounds like we're pretty much speaking with one voice down here tonight. I want to address the legislative map, and I want to remind the Commission that Cochise County is indeed a community of interest, and we're a community of interest with regard to natural assets such as water, the San Pedro riparian. We are a community of interest with cultural assets such as libraries. Sierra Vista has a large semi-regional library, and it trades books with towns that would now be in the salamander. Our school districts are being split apart, and our economic assets such as tourism overlap greatly. And again, thank you very much for your time in coming here.
Thank you, Mr. Brunel. Our next speaker is Andre Newcomb.
Good evening. My name is Andre Newcomb, NEWC1B. Legislatively, I think what you're doing is trying to maintain a rural presence in the legislature, and I thank you very much for respecting us like that. I'm not making a joke. I thank you. 10 years ago, you also tried to do that. After CAP went online, you tried to draw up a line where our district would follow the water, and that was very respectful also of you, and I thank you. Congressionally, that district on the east side, that's more than a 400-mile swath. That is requiring awful lot for people to see their congressperson, and it is also requiring an awful lot of congressional staff to do their duties. It's very dangerous for them to have to cover so much territory. I would hope that you would reconsider that district over there. Personally, this citizen here in Sierra Vista, we have 4 stores now. You gave us a freeway, Phoenix, Tucson. You gave us a freeway. We have 13 screens now. We have 3 new TV stations in Tucson. We have a University of Arizona here. Our hospital's doing fine. You folks in Phoenix help our schools stay alive. You trying to keep the rural presence alive in Phoenix I thank you very much for that. And I respect what you're doing. I trust that you will continue to do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Fleming. Marty, we're about halfway through. Okay. Mr. Fleming will be followed by Joy Mims, Elizabeth Bernstein, and Vera Hilsky.
Okay, I'm Bob Fleming. That's F-L-E-M-I-N-D 1-M. I live just south of Sierra Vista and Cochise County, and I appreciate you being here. It's very obvious that the existence of the IRC removes the conflict of interest that would exist if the legislature were deciding on the districts themselves. It is important to meet most criteria and also have as many competitive districts as possible in order to make sure that all Arizona citizens are truly represented. I am concerned about this sort of a tail on LD2. Much of what I have to say has already been said. But what that means, it's not compact. And as I look at the map, geographically, it looks like the only one that isn't. As a community of interest, especially geographically, Bisbee and Douglas has more in common with Cochise County than it does Santa Cruz County. And that is, whether it's socially, geographically, community resources, and lifestyles. And I believe that Bisbee and Douglas would be better represented if they were together with Cochise County. That being said, please reconsider the boundaries of LD1 and LD2 and put Bisbee and Douglas into LD1, which in my opinion would make both districts relatively competitive with little or no sacrifice of other criteria, and still, I believe, would comply with the Voting Rights Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Joy Mims.
My name is Joy Mims, M-I-M-S. I'm from Sierra Vista, and I'm an educator at Fort Huachuca Accommodation Schools, and I currently teach kindergarten. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for being here. I realize being on the commission is a difficult task, and I appreciate you being on it. I'd like to share my personal perspective here. I've lived in Cochise County for 28 years. Following 4 years of living on Fort Huachuca as a military family, we moved to Benson. I lived in Benson for 20 years. 4 years ago, I moved back to Sierra Vista. When I changed my voter registration to my new address, I was shocked and confused to realize I was not in the same legislative district as Cochise County. For the past 4 years, I felt alienated politically from my friends and family in Cochise County, and definitely felt underrepresented in Legislative District 30. What I'm seeing now with the proposed legislative districts is the same separation of a community and lack of competitiveness. These maps are alienating members of the same community. Our school districts will be split. Bisbee is our county seat. Our county fair is in Douglas. They both should be in the same LD as the rest of the county. Cochise County, all of Cochise County, is our community of interest. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Mims. Elizabeth Bernstein.
Honorable members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident of Bisbee. My name is Elizabeth Bernstein, Elizabeth with a Z. Bernstein is B-E-R-N-S-T-E-I-N. In the year 2000, when the voters of Arizona deliberately removed the process of redistricting from the legislature and vested it in this commission, the publicity pamphlet in favor of the successful Proposition 106 called it a conflict of interest for legislators to create their own districts. Today, across the state and across the country, we see that citizens are sick of a situation in which those who hold positions of power and privilege rig the game to disadvantage those who seek to come after them. Sick of a situation where elections are determined before the votes are cast. If it were simply a matter of contiguous, compact districts or communities of interest, the legislature could have been trusted to continue handling redistricting. What the legislature could not be trusted to do, what this commission was created to do, was to create competitive districts, districts that would not be locked in safe for incumbents. I understand that this commission is getting pressure from two sides. There are representatives of majority-minority districts who are now advocating for supermajority minority districts. And federal law does require that minorities maintain their previous ability to elect the candidates of their choice. But as Mr. Ortega noted earlier, it's also a violation of the Voting Rights Act to pack minorities into a small number of districts to the detriment of competitiveness. The currently proposed legislative map statewide goes too far in the direction of packing. For example, with 4 districts with over 60% minority and additional districts with over 50% minority majority. That goes way beyond the concentration of minorities that are seen in our current federally approved legislative maps. I urge the commission to alter the legislative maps in the direction of less packing and more competitiveness. On the congressional side, we have politicians claiming that the draft map is too competitive, even suggesting that the state rightfully belongs to one party. The state of Arizona does not belong to any party. No party claims more than 35% voter registration, and the makeup of our congressional delegation has been changing from one election to the next. 3 competitive congressional districts is good as far as it goes. 4 or 5 would be even better. If this commission were to allow the politicians to tell it what lines to draw, it will have failed the task given it by the voters and negated the main reason for its existence. I thank you for all of your efforts and considerable efforts, and I urge you to stand firm for maximum competitiveness.
Thank you, Ms. Bernstein. Vera Hilsky, who will be followed by Sandy Hummingbird, Dr. Fred Thompson, and Kale Kuyabin. Okay. Vera has left, so let's move on to Sandy Hummingbird. Thank you.
My name is Sandy Hummingbird, Hummingbird. Thank you for coming to see us, and thank you for all of your efforts. I've lived in Arizona for 25 years and in Bisbee for 15. I participate in many of the activities of Cochise County. As suggested by the Supreme Court of Arizona, redistricting maps should attend to all 6 of the goals, specifically and specifically equal. I feel the current maps are lax in attending to the competitiveness and the communities of interest. We need fair districts and fair politics in this next decade. We need districts that will represent all Arizonans. Today, voter registration figures show that the party affiliation is approximately 1/3 for each, Democrat, Republican, and Independents. We need balanced and fair districts that actually reflect our state electorate. When opposite party candidates actually have to compete for the vote, they must talk to all their constituents, not just to their party, to gain the vote. This encourages higher civic involvement and higher voter participation as a result. Voters must feel that their voices count in an election. It's documented in the community activities and cross-county events reported by our shared area media that Cochise County is a community of interest. We cross towns, rivers, interstate and local highways to participate in county activities. We share libraries, service clubs, colleges, healthcare systems. Grants and funding are often by the community. Splitting it could pit area against area for the same funding by different representatives. Now, I realize that asking for a whole Cochise County could create other problems in other areas and even make the map worse for us. But while the current CD map does show some competitiveness, it does divide our community of interest. Moving eastern Cochise County into District 2 specifically would accomplish this without dissolving competitiveness. Pulling the southern bordered towns of Cochise County, including the county seat, into a different legislative district splits over 29,000 people. A little tweaking of this to move these towns into the District 1 on the legislative map with the rest of the county would make both districts more competitive. Now, I know 2 changes that I'm asking for are very specific, but they would address all the other issues. It's possible to keep communities of interest and still create competitive districts. I urge you to consider these changes in the current maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hummingbird. Dr. Fred Thompson.
I am Dr. Fred Thompson, and I live in Sierra Vista. I am a dry Thompson. My name is spelled Thomson, no P. Let me first express my disappointment and even disgust at the Commission's alleged conduct with respect to the Arizona Open Meeting Law. I urge all members of this Commission to cooperate fully with the Attorney General's investigation of alleged violations. Not doing so raises serious questions of malfeasance and/or fiduciary irresponsibility. My main concern tonight, however, is the redistricting maps proposed by the Commission. I strongly object to the Commission's apparent emphasis on competitiveness, to the detriment of the other criteria mandated by Article 4, Part 2, Section 1 of the Arizona Constitution. This provision permits competitiveness to be considered only when to do so will not create a significant detriment to the 5 other goals, all of which are mandated. These 5 goals are not simply permissive. Their achievement is mandated. Thus, to conform with the Arizona Constitution, competitiveness must be ignored unless and until the other goals have been met. They have not been met by the maps you have presented. Goal 3, for instance, mandates that districts shall be geographically compact and contiguous. Your congressional map of 10-11 splits Cochise County in half, attaching the eastern half of Cochise County to bits of other counties as far-flung as Coconino makes no sense. Just what community of interest is being respected here? Redo the maps. We don't want to be divided. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Cale. I'm going to let him pronounce his last name. Thank you. He'll be followed by Iris Lynch, Marie Wagner, and Mark Stonebaker.
Name is Cale Kiabu, first name K-A-L-E, last name K-I-Y-A-B-U. I live here in Sierra Vista. I just got some short. I'm assuming that what we say here is being tallied up, and based on the tally, you may make some changes or not. So that's why I'm here. I think that Cochise County ought to be whole. The suggestion for a good starting place to go back and possibly redraw the maps is the grid map that you showed. I like the way the grid map looked. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Iris Lynch. Marie Wagner.
My name is Marie Wagner, W-A-G-N-E-R. I came down here tonight to address concerns about your plans to divide Cochise County, both legislatively and congressionally. This has never, I repeat, never been done in our history of Cochise County. First, I question if you happen to study your guidelines for a redistricting process. Why do I ask such a preliminary question? Because the guidelines you missed read as follows, quote, "The district shall be geographically compact and contiguous to the extent practicable," unquote. Now let's look at the legislative map. As you can see, Cochise County is not geographically compact. Plainly, it's chopped up, even to the extent of stealing squiggles along the southern border, cutting out Bisbee and Douglas. Pretty incompetent, as you can see. Now to the congressional map. Can we say chopped liver? Again, Cochise County is not compact, but actually cut in half. This is, there is a tiny bit left on the border of Mexico, then it goes north and goes north and north some more, clear up to Utah. Now add on large chunks westward in 2 places, it is totally and completely uncompact. Please allow me to aid you as you go back to the drawing board. Compact, accordingly to Webster, reads thusly, quote, "Having parts or units closely packed or joined, occupying small volume by reason of efficient use of space," unquote. There's more, but I think we'll all agree that neither of these maps fit the definition of geographically compact. And as an aside, I totally agree with Tom Crosby on all of his remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Our next speaker is Mark Stone. I think this says Breaker. Is that right? They'll be followed by Casey Jones, David Penrose, and Bob Evans.
Commissioner McNulty and Sturts, thank you for coming down today. I'm Mark Stonebreaker, that's S-T-O-N-E-B-R-A-K-E-R. I want to register my support for the IRC process and the Proposition 106. Even though not everyone will be happy with any compromise, it's better to keep partisan politics out of this process, as others have said. I've lived in Cochise County for 13 years, and I have felt often that my vote was futile, and I think if we split off these three communities from our district, that will make it even less balanced, I believe. It's critical that candidates be compelled to address the needs of everyone in the community, not just their own party. So I ask for competitiveness there. I think I would like to see my friends and neighbors remain in the same district with me. District 2, the new proposed District 2 would have 66% minorities, which I think is plenty for a minority district. If you put these communities back in our district, I don't think it would affect that too much and would give us better balance. I think you've done an excellent job otherwise. It's too bad I have to just dwell on the things that I don't like, but thank you very much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Stonebreaker. Casey Jones.
My name is Casey Jones, C-A-S-E-Y-J-O-N-E-S. I'm a retired Army officer. I've resided in the Sierra Vista, Fort Huachuca area since 1976. I'm here by choice, and I like it here. We asked you down, or you invited yourself down in August, and you heard a lot of people then talk about our community of interest, and I'd like to address a couple of those communities of interest. One of the really things I'm most proud of in my life is that I'm a 35-year volunteer for the Special Olympics. I spent a good number of years as the area director for Special Olympics for Sierra Vista and Douglas. That's a community of interest. And you've ignored it, and I resent it. You have drawn lines which separate school districts. There is no more important community of interest than our children and their education, and you have ignored it. You have a very difficult job, I will grant you that. I also had the good fortune to be I have the good fortune to being an ex-city council member here in Sierra Vista. In my short political career, it came very early to a conclusion that in the political process, logic and common sense doesn't always prevail. Unfortunately, in all too many and perhaps the majority of cases, it need not even be considered. You have heard a lot of logic and common sense here tonight. I plead with you, do not ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Herter, we have about 15 speakers. Would you like to keep going, or would you like to take a break? Okay, let's keep going. Mr. Penrose, David.
A little short here. Okay, David Penrose, D-A-V-I-D-P-E-N-R-O-S-E, a good, simple Cornish name. I live in Sierra Vista Southeast, just north of the Hereford line. To begin with, I've heard questions on what competitiveness is. Best way to put it is competitive district would be like the Indiana Congressional District 8 back in the 70s in the Evansville area. Basically, either party, both parties were winning within about 5% of the vote during that time period, and they had 4 or 5 different congressmen in that area. That's what I consider competitiveness. Now, with the 2 maps that you've drawn up, number 1, you've taken the about, I hear, 7,300 people over in eastern end of our county. Really, what do ranchers there have to do with either Flagstaff or the Casa Grande area? You would be much better served giving us back those people with the rest of the county and getting, say, people from the Marana, Oro Valley, Cotoro Farms area along I-10, which would be more in a community interest with the people from Eloy to Casa Grande who are also in CD1. Okay, and with the LD1, LD2, now, if I read that map correctly, the people who live on the north or west of the Bisbee city limits are just outside that district, even though they are basically Bisbeeites, they just happen to be outside the city limits. I think that's what you made the line with. I couldn't be sure looking at it last night. And dividing Hereford Palominas along Coronado, Three Canyon Road, and Palominas and Hereford roads splits both the community, splits school and other communities of interest, most definitely. Please give us back the people from the South County. Incidentally, I'm like others here. I live in the Sierra Vista area, but I do business in the Bisbee area. Self-employed, but still. My people are down in Bisbee and Douglas, not Sierra Vista. That's basic comment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Penrose. Bob Evans will be next, followed by Eric Fast, Lee Toming, and Mary Jane Maland.
My name is Bob Evans. I've been a CPA in Sierra Vista since 1980. I've served all of Cochise County, and I think I have a feel for the social and economic ties that bind the county together, and I'd like to say that I believe that they're strong. I would also like to second the comments that I would hope that the commission would relieve themselves of the cloud that they have allowed to gather over their heads for their lack of cooperation in terms of the investigation of the open meeting laws. The maps that you have drawn up, and I do appreciate the difficulty and the efforts that have gone into them, but I believe that they, as it relates to Cochise County, they violate all of the criteria that is in the Constitution, except for probably the Voting Rights Act and equal population. Surely the little squizzle along the bottom to take in Bisbee and Douglas, and the strip along the eastern side of the state, which I guess is there to, at least in name, incorporate 3 border districts, break up this continuity. And I believe that they violate that compactness and continuity and contiguousness that is required by the Constitution. They clearly violate the communities of interest. The people in the eastern part of the county clearly relate to the rest of the county, not to the areas north up to Utah and Flagstaff. Boy, that goes fast, doesn't it?
Time flies.
But going on, the geographic features, again, would indicate, you know, with the various mountain ranges, the roads and whatnot, that Cochise County be a contiguous area. And ironically, I believe that the one that particularly Republicans, which I admit to being one, are concerned about, competitiveness, I believe that those changes would make both areas more competitive between the two major parties in the state instead of less competitive. And as a last point, Rubens Ortega's comments as relating to packing districts, I think when you try to take in Douglas along with Nogales to generate a very Hispanic district, you probably are packing the district and may end up having to have that resolved by the courts. I hope not. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Eric Fast.
Good evening. Please meet here, E-R-I-C, middle initial B, last name F-A-S-T. I believe you've heard maybe from some minorities here. I felt somewhat intimidated by the person in the movie at the beginning speaking about minorities, but I think you've heard from them here, and some majorities who were left out. This, I do have questions about the Judicial Commission appointing this commission. I do have questions about some of your actions and decisions to redistrict some, changing the competitiveness of some districts, clear from 4% to over 100% in the other, with another party. I also, and I feel that I have lost some representation myself, which I thought we were all about. And may we remind some who feel the need to lash out about other parties that even our council members have a right to free speech, as the rest of us do. I support Tom Crosby and others on the council more than I do one or two of them. I believe that districts to the decision that you've come to in this last map, which is only brought in as a very last map and opposed to by two of the members of the commission, misrepresents our county down here. And you've heard the numerous times the violation of the Arizona Constitution in compactness, common interest, and so forth in redistricting. Some of these that cross hundreds of miles is certainly not representative of the people. It is preposterous and unreasonable to do so. So on that, my only say to you is I would recommend, and I would like to say to you, as one citizen who gives authority to those that are in elected positions, I would like to, and who are hired by the people, to reconsider this county and rejoin it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Toming.
I've really shortened down the amount of remarks that I intend to make by Matt. I agree entirely with Matt Cregan.
Would you spell your name?
Oh, my name is Lee Thoming, T-H-O-M-I-N-G. And I agree with, to shorten things up, I agree with Matt Cregan. And also, I agree with Dr. Thompson that been so many issues have been brought up tonight of a legal nature that we need to get the investigation by the Attorney General. And I want to see Cochise County as one county. And you look at the map there, and remember this is going to go to a judge. And that squiggly marks down there in the lower part of our county is a textbook in fact, go to the old encyclopedias and look up the gerrymandering, and they will have that exact type of illustration in there. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Mary Jane Mayland. Morris Farr. Mr. Farr will be followed by Jim Binky, Charles Carlson, and Sally Acevedo.
Good evening. My name is spelled M-O-R-R-I-S and F-A-R-R. Commissioners, you'll probably be happy to know that I have no position to take on the splitting of Cochise County. I live in Sonoyta, and I am here tonight basically because I'm going to be out of town when you have your hearing in Nogales in a few days. But what I do want to do is I want to represent the position of Arizona Borderlands Democrats. That's our organization in Patagonia and Sonoyta. And the issue I want to quickly discuss with you is actually not a partisan issue, but it's one that we are very concerned with in Sonoyta and Patagonia. Namely, it is the Rosemont Mine. Now, I'm not going to harangue you on the pros or the cons of opposition to that mine, but I will suggest that that is probably the issue in Sonoyta and Patagonia. It's one that unites Democrats and Republicans, and one that we are all very concerned with. And we think that it would be of some advantage to us to be physically located in the same congressional district as the mine. That would make it easier for us to lobby. And as I say that, I want to also point out that we have enjoyed tremendous support from both of our Congress people from the southern Arizona. Both Gabrielle Giffords and Raul Grijalva have been great in supporting our cause. But we think, as we look to the future, that an issue that's going to be going on for, we suspect, quite a few years to come, that it would be advantageous to us in our opposition to be able to communicate directly with the congressperson who has that mine in their district. That's the point that I wanted to bring up with you tonight. And I'll also suggest that we have a general preference for competitive districts. And I believe we have sent an email to you about that earlier, and I will do that email again just so you can be sure to have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. Jim Binky.
Jim Benke, spelled B-E-H-N-K-E. I have 2 points. One, keep Cochise County together. 2, concerns the congressional district. I was very sad to see that most, if not all, of the city of Tucson was included in our congressional district. We are 2 vastly different entities. They are a big city with big city problems, and we are ranchers and rural and not from the same mindset. We have enormous problems on the border. If you're a rancher here, you carry a gun. And that's sad that he's not protected by his own government. Every 2 years when our congressperson or people are running for re-election, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they come down to our border, put their arm around a horse, and then tell us how much they love us. And then they go back to Tucson and they go back to Washington, D.C., and nothing is ever done. So we need a representative, a congressional representative from this area. I think an ideal congressional district would be the 3 counties of Cochise, Greenlee, and Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banky. Charles Carlson. Is Reverend Carlson here? Sally Acevedo.
Hi, my name is Sally Acevedo.
Acevedo, from Sierra Vista, and Tom Crosby speaks for me. I'm here once again to voice my displeasure over the proposed districts the AIRC have put forth for us here in Cochise County. May I remind the Commission that pursuant to Davis v. Bandemer, 478 U.S. 109 from 1986, that gerrymandering is unconstitutional. The districts set forth clearly do not comply with Arizona state law, and I am left with little alternative than to believe something nefarious is afoot. What you have proposed is not even close to reasonable, contiguous, nor do they follow federal voting rights guidelines. Cochise County has been deliberately divided so as to reduce our voting power to suit an agenda. We do not abide by sanctuary cities, preferring to abide by our foundation as a constitutional republic and be a nation of laws. We are not a metropolitan region, enjoy our more rural nature, our Wild West heritage, low crime rates, and the beauty of our Sky Islands, the San Pedro, and our neighbors. Monument and Horseshoe proved we can take care of one another far quicker and more efficiently than some federal bureaucracy. And this is despite our differing political opinions, which are usually very passionate. Our industry consists of ranching, mining, agriculture, tourism, or FORT, along with government agencies which support our position as a border county. Our leisure time is spent enjoying our forests when not threatened or closed due to poor federal policy and enforcement of laws, hunting, fishing, golfing, prospecting, as well as the many opportunities to simply enjoy the beauty of nature we have been blessed with. Our neighbors are retirees, our military and their families, government employees and contractors, snowbirds, and yes, the dreaded Tea Party members. You have made a mockery of the process of redistricting with what you have presented. Cochise would be more suited to, one, not be divided, and two, to include areas perhaps Greenlee and Graham counties, East Santa Cruz, or perhaps even Southeast Pima. Instead, you have chosen to divvy us up, treating us like a red-headed stepchild. The other thing to note is the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government, whom you seem to rely heavily upon. I find it interesting the only place they can be found, other than newspaper articles, is via talking points put out on their behalf by the Sierra Club. As a Latina, this group does not speak for me, but it is appearing they may speak for SEIU and MoveOn.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Seven. You sure you're okay? Okay. Rick Dixon is our next speaker, and he will be followed by Donald Simpson and Dale Stoner.
Good evening. It's Dixon, D-I-X-O-N. I just wanted to reiterate what's already been spoken here tonight. I'm really displeased with what this commission has done so far. This map is a joke. Splitting the county like it is doesn't work for me. And again, I don't have 5 hours to drive to Flagstaff to visit with a congressman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Donald Simpson.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Donald Simpson, S-I-M-P-S-O-N. I've practiced dentistry in Sierra Vista for 36 years. I certainly love Cochise County. I appreciate your hard work, and I appreciate you coming on down here. I know that's tough driving. It is hard work. You start out with a blank piece, but then you came up with a nice county grid. Why didn't you stick to that? When I looked at this map, and I was aghast. I said, you know, the Proposition 106 said that they wanted to get the politics out of redistricting. They wanted to get rid of the shenanigans like gerrymandering. We figured if we gave it to an independent commission, that might happen. They gave you got 6 criteria. 2 are mandated by the federal government. The judge will review those, and you met those. The next 3, compactness and contiguousness, I have to say, prima facie evidence is just look at the damn map. It's not there. And excuse me for the language, but I am very angry when I look at that map. You did not respect communities of interest. When you show that squiggly line in Cochise County, that just shows me you had a goal in mind. You turned it around to get your so-called competitiveness, which is a code word for let's elect more Democrats. Come on, face it. Arizona is a primarily conservative state. I have voted for Democrats, Libertarians, Republicans. I vote for the person. If they give me a good view, I don't care what their party is. And I find it horrible that you even look at party affiliation until you've drawn a map. Draw the map, then look and see if you've met all the other criteria. It's supposed to be subjugated to the other criteria. So, in short, you have failed. You failed in your results, and from what I've heard, rumor, you failed in the process. Make it an open book. Cochise County, there's no reason that Cochise County can't be in one congressional district, and there's no reason it can't be in one legislative district. Just make it closer to the grid maps. And again, I thank you for your work. I just say go back and look at what your mandate is and give us one whole county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Dale Stoner, followed by Wesley Webb and Stephen Butler.
Dale, D-A-L-E, S-T-O-N-E-R. Thank you. I would like to address the situation of the proposed redistricting maps. Number one, it is my opinion that they are a violation of Proposition 106, what I consider to be the malaligned for a purpose of partisan advantage. Number two, I see a violation of directives of the Constitution. Number three, I see that we are disenfranchised through thousands of legal voters by counting populations of non-legal voters. I see a violation of open meeting laws. Because of the blatant disregard for these violations, I do have a recommendation. And my recommendation is to Tom Horn and our honorable governor that they dismiss all 5 of the unelected, unaccountable members of the Redistricting Commission and start over.
Thank you, Mr. Stoner. Wesley Webb. Is Wesley Webb here? Stephen Butler.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Butler. I'm from Benson, Arizona, and I've lived here for 6 years now. I'm here on behalf of my wife who's ill, my daughter and her husband who live over in Tombstone, and we'd like to express our concerns about this congressional redistricting map and the legislative map that's being presented. The San Pedro Valley is and the San Pedro River and the riparian area around it is the jewel of Cochise County. And it's one of the primary reasons why we settled here. And I was very disheartened, my family was very disheartened when we looked at the congressional draft map and saw that our county was split right down the middle of the San Pedro Valley along the river. On one side, we're blessed with the Chiricahua Mountains and the Dragoon. On the other side, we have the Whetstone and the Huachuca Mountains. I can guarantee you that the congressional district that stretches all the way to the Utah and Nevada borders up there at the Grand Canyon could care less about our San Pedro Valley down here. And the other concern is on the legislative map. I noticed that down on the southern border of the county, that Cochise County's economic engine is the fort at Sierra Vista and the port at Douglas. And I've noticed that the Redistricting Commission has carved out the Douglas-Bisbee area and handed that over to the area over in Sonoyta. And again, their interests are not our interests here in Cochise County, and I would strongly encourage the Redistricting Commission to consider carving those out of Cochise County and give them back to us and unite the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We have 3 more speakers: Pat Fleming, Jane Tilton, and Mary Frances Klinkon.
Good evening, Commissioners. Welcome back to our wonderful Cochise County. For the record, my name is Pat Fleming, F-L-E-M-I-N-G. I'm not here to lecture. You've certainly had enough of that this evening, but I am here to offer some constructive considerations and recommendations. I'm also here this evening as an advocate for good government, true legislative representation, and my communities here in southeastern Arizona. You've already been reminded, after having described what happened in November 2000, where the voters decided by citizens' initiative, the Proposition 106 voted to create you as a commission. I commend you for your efforts. I know it's got to be very difficult to sit there and be blasted on occasion, and I'm very sorry you have to sit there and do that. We're charged here with drawing the new congressional and state legislative districts in accordance with all of the descriptions that have already been read. The current approved statewide legislative map is the subject of my conversation tonight. It's been specifically disenfranchising our border communities, those of Bisbee, Naco, Douglas, parts of Hereford, and parts of Palominas. Like so many others here in Cochise County, I feel that Cochise County is in itself a community of interest. We're proud of being rural, and we're proud of our various communities. We respect the lines that define our schools, our school and our fire districts. Disturbing these districts is not in the best interest of our citizens, and I fear that that is something that is going to happen within the legislative district. The current boundaries of LD1 and LD2 create 2 major non-competitive districts. Specifically, LD1 now has a 16-point advantage in the Republican registration, while LD2, an obviously packed minority-majority district, has a 26-point advantage for the Democratic registrars. Candidates from any party should be able to have an equal chance at winning an election, and that's the voice of competitiveness. With some moderate modifications, those 2 huge discrepancies could be somewhat remedied and at least close some of the voter variances by keeping all of Cochise County in the same legislative districts. This will respect certain distinctions such as the school districts and boundaries that I've already spoken of. The packing of any new district is totally inappropriate and disregards competitiveness. LD2, as it is now, has obviously been packed, which it would be, of course, a violation of the Voting Rights Act. By giving our southern border communities of the greater Bisbee, Naco, Douglas areas back into LD1, we certainly can help reduce some of that packing, and we will allow it to be more compact, and will make our Cochise County reflect our community of interest. Thank you for your attention, and have a safe journey back.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Jane Tilton.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Commissioners. We're glad that you came to listen to us. I don't have a lot of important credentials. I'm just a citizen of this county. My husband is a 5th-generation native of Cochise County. Some of his family on the other side settled Graham County. I grew up in Yuma and up in Coconino County. And I can tell you, Yuma and Coconino County don't have our interests at heart down here. There is no way that they deal with the same issues. Their issues are serious, but particularly Coconino County's interest, Navajo County's interest, the other Apache County. These are not our issues. We need to be represented in the legislature and in Congress. We need Cochise County to stay together. Our community of interest is small cities. It is rural. It is agriculture. It is mining. We fit much more with Graham County, Greenlee County, perhaps the very easternmost parts of Pima and Santa Cruz County. We do not fit with the northeastern portion of the state. Please keep Cochise County together. Please let us be represented. I'm not so concerned about competitiveness of Republicans and Democrats as I am competitiveness of Cochise County. We need to be represented. Believe me, if you put us with Tucson and our representative has to decide when they come another BRAC closing whether they support the air base in Tucson or Fort Huachuca, you can bet with more voters in Tucson, they're going to support that base, not Fort Huachuca. We need to be represented. Please redraw that map for us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Tilton. Mary Frances Clinkham?
That's my bad writing.
Sorry.
My last
Clinton?
name is Clinton, which most people can spell now, even if I write it kind of funny. And my first name, Mary Frances, is all one word with a capital F in the middle. You've heard what was my first reaction. I live a third of a mile north of the border and a third of a mile west of the San Pedro. And I'm being cut off from my community, which goes back in my case to homestead times. 1903 is when my family started there, and I live in the very same area, just on the other side of the line of the original homestead property. So my feeling about the integrity of the whole county of Cochise, which in those homestead times, people went from town to town to town because that's the way they had to do business. And we still have that kind of familiarity. So I won't press that any more than to just give that personal sense of reality of our community, which I will forgive you for missing that because we were a long ways away and maybe we didn't look like we counted, but I know you know we do now. The second thing I want to say is that we proved our competitiveness in the last election. Gabriel Gifford did win that election, but not because there was some sort of equal thought by everybody all the same. But more importantly, even when we disagree, we have a sense of common interest that maybe we look at it from this angle or from that angle, but even in my community of Palominas, where we're very strongly divided or maybe united, I don't know if I'm the only one who isn't a Tea Party member, but the fact of the matter is I have many Tea Party friends, and we have a sense of community. So across the lines of political and special interests, there's a wholeness here that I think you now know is important. The last thing I want to say is I realize you have a very difficult job, and I wouldn't trade skins with you. I hope yours are much thicker than mine. And I apologize that some people feel that it's okay to just attack without any other consideration. I appreciate your sense of duty, your fiduciary responsibility, and your awareness of it, and the difficulty of all the special interests and difficult powers that you have to deal with. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you, Ms. Clinton. That's our last speaker form. Is there anyone that we've missed that turned in a speaker form? Okay, I want to thank you for taking the time to give us your thoughts tonight. We have a tradition that we share the mic with our fellow commissioners, so I'll turn it over now to Mr. Sturts for any closing words that he'd like to make.
Thank you. I want to tell you how incredibly impressed I am
Thank you. I want to tell you how incredibly impressed I am at the turnout tonight here in Sierra Vista, people coming all the way from Globe and coming down. I first started coming to Sierra Vista because my brother, right after college, moved to Sierra Vista to work at the newspaper here, and then he moved down to Douglas. So I've been a longtime visitor of Sierra Vista and Douglas. I lost my brother in 1995 to cancer, so he was known for breaking the Hannigan story years ago. I want to tell you how impressed I was at the new ideas that came out tonight, how passionate there was. There was a lot of passion on both sides, and there was a lot of food for thought that was given. We've got, I believe, 10 more or 11 more public hearings that we're going to be having. Then the 30 days will be closed, and the commission will be doing a lot of hard work. Trust me, we will be listening to every word that was said tonight. So thank you very, very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you for spending the evening with us. This is a complicated job, and I want to thank our staff. You can rest assured that whatever your concerns are about the work that we're doing, we're working hard, and we have a fabulous staff. And I particularly want to thank Mr. Herter for hanging in there so that we could allow everyone to speak and allow you to get home before it's too late. So with that, I'll call the meeting adjourned at 8:37 p.m.